Elliot Hayes was a young lawyer, fresh out of law school and making his way through the corporate world with the same meticulous precision that he applied to his cases. But despite his success in the courtroom, there was one area of his life that seemed impossible to win: his family. It wasn't a case he could argue with logic or facts, nor was there any clause in the legal books that could protect him from the relentless pressure. Every Sunday dinner, his mother, a sweet but persistent woman, would slide her casserole dish across the table and launch her usual barrage of questions. "Are you seeing anyone, Elliot? How about that nice girl you met last month? Your father was married at your age. Don't you want to settle down and start a family?" He tried his best to dodge the subject, offering vague answers or diverting the conversation to work, but his mother was like a dog with a bone. His father, meanwhile, remained quiet, but the unspoken expectation was clear. Every time Elliot came home, his parents' eyes said the same thing: "When will you get married?" But Christmas was a different animal altogether. The annual Hayes family Christmas celebration had a way of amplifying the pressure. This year, the expectations were higher than ever. With his cousin Emily recently engaged to a charming young man, Elliot felt like the last piece of the puzzle that wasn't fitting. His family had already sent out save-the-dates for the wedding, and each time he arrived at their house, the subject of his non-existent relationship was treated with the same gravity as a courtroom closing argument. Elliot tried to convince himself that he could survive this holiday season by simply doing what he always did: smile, nod, and make up excuses about how he was too focused on work. But deep down, he knew it wasn't going to be that simple. As he sat at his desk in his downtown Manhattan office, scrolling through emails, his phone buzzed with a text from his mother. He almost didn't need to read it to know what it said. "Have you found someone to bring to Christmas dinner yet?" The text was blunt and to the point, like a subpoena demanding an answer. The pinging notification mocked him, a cruel reminder that he had a ticking clock in the form of a holiday dinner where his lack of a partner would be the main topic of conversation. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, thinking of ways to respond. He could lie, of course, but the idea of another round of disappointing explanations didn't appeal to him. The more he thought about it, the more desperate the situation seemed. Maybe he could bring someone who would put an end to this insanity, someone who would fill the empty chair next to him and take the heat off. But who? That's when it hit him: a fake date. A simple, no-strings-attached arrangement. Someone to pretend. Someone who could pretend just as well as he needed. It was a brilliant idea, wasn't it? A quick fix, a band-aid solution. There was only one problem. Where could he find such a person? As if the universe was listening, his phone rang. It was his old college buddy, Nate. "Hey, Elliot. I've got a crazy idea for you." Nate's voice was full of energy, a stark contrast to Elliot's tired mind. "What now, Nate?" Elliot asked, leaning back in his chair. "You're still single, right?" Elliot groaned. "Yes, Nate, I'm still single. And it's not for lack of trying." "Why?" "Well, I was reading this article and it's all about those hire-a-date services, like for events and family gatherings. I thought it could be the perfect solution for your little Christmas dilemma." Elliot blinked, unsure if Nate was joking. "Hire-a-date? What are you, the dating equivalent of a temp agency?" "Exactly. You pay someone to pretend to be your girlfriend for a day. No awkwardness, no commitments. You get your family off your back and they get paid. No harm done." Elliot's mind raced. "That's actually kind of genius. Do you think it would work?" Nate chuckled. "Only one way to find out. I'll send you a link. Trust me, you'll be thanking me when your mom stops texting you every 5 minutes." Before Elliot could protest further, Nate hung up. Seconds later, a link appeared in his inbox, and with a sigh, Elliot clicked it. The website was straightforward. Rent a companion. He scrolled through the options. Most of the profiles seemed too polished: perfect smiles, professional photos, and carefully curated bios that read like they belonged in a movie. But then he stumbled upon one that caught his eye. Her name was Mia Lancaster. Actress. Willing to take on anything that involves a happy ending. Christmas dinners are a specialty. Elliot raised an eyebrow. Her profile picture was a little unconventional. She had that mid-tier movie vibe, with messy curls and an unapologetic grin, dressed in a sequin dress at a party. Not a typical look for someone he would bring home to meet his family, but it had a certain charm. And besides, this was just a performance. With a deep breath, he clicked on the message button. "Hi, I need a date for Christmas dinner this year. Interested?" He hit send, then immediately felt a wave of secondhand embarrassment. What was he doing? Was this really necessary? But before he could talk himself out of it, the reply popped up. "I'm in. What's the plan?" The simplicity of her response was oddly reassuring. It was happening. He had a date for Christmas dinner. Sort of. 3 days later, Elliot found himself standing in front of a modest brownstone apartment in Brooklyn. His heart was racing as he stared at the doorbell, knowing that on the other side was Mia, his hired date, who would be playing the role of the perfect girlfriend for his family's Christmas dinner. He had no idea what he was getting into, but he had to admit, he was kind of excited. Mia opened the door, and Elliot almost forgot how to breathe. She was not what he expected. Sure, she looked like she belonged in an indie film, but there was something about the way she smiled that caught him off guard. It wasn't the fake smile of an actress playing a role, it was genuine. And it made his heart flutter in a way he couldn't explain. "You must be Elliot," Mia said, her voice light and warm. "You look like someone who's desperately trying to avoid making eye contact. But don't worry, I'm not that bad." He chuckled nervously, trying to steady his breath. "Yeah, I'm, just a little nervous. This whole thing is a bit out of my comfort zone." Mia gave him a playful wink. "Relax. I'm just here for the Christmas cheer. And the paycheck, of course." As they walked down the stairs to his car, Elliot felt the beginnings of something unexpected. This wasn't just some charade. No, there was something about Mia that made the fake date feel real. Little did he know, this Christmas dinner was about to turn into an event neither of them would ever forget. The line between pretend and reality was about to blur, and Elliot was completely unprepared for what came next. The drive from Brooklyn to Elliot's apartment was awkward at first. The car was quiet, the soft hum of the engine filling the space between them. Elliot kept sneaking glances at Mia, but every time he did, she caught his eye and flashed him a knowing smile, one that said, "Relax, I'm not going to bite." She was right, of course. She was just a woman hired to pretend to be his girlfriend for one evening. A simple, harmless charade. And yet, Elliot couldn't help but feel like this was the beginning of something, well, more complicated than he had anticipated. So, Mia finally broke the silence, adjusting the strap of her bag on her lap. "What's the game plan for this family dinner? Do I need to brush up on any family gossip, or should I just smile and nod at whatever your mom says?" Elliot snorted. "My mom's going to talk about her latest gardening project, ask you about your job, and then complain that I'm still not married. My dad will say one word the whole evening, football, and then probably fall asleep before dessert." Mia laughed, a warm, genuine sound that made Elliot feel a little less tense. "Sounds like a dream," she teased. "So, I'll be playing the role of perfect girlfriend, huh? Do I need to bring my A game? You could always just pretend to be charming, I guess." Elliot smirked. "Pretend?" Mia raised an eyebrow, her eyes glinting mischievously. "You think I need to pretend to be charming? I was born with it, darling." "Yeah, well, I was born with a penchant for sarcasm," Elliot replied, shaking his head. "But don't worry, I'm sure you'll do fine. Just don't, say anything weird. I don't know, too real." Mia shot him an exaggerated look of offense. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I'd be ruining your pristine family Christmas dinner with my realness." Elliot laughed, rubbing his neck nervously. Well, things tend to get complicated with my family, and the less complicated I make it, the better. It's like my mom's version of Judgment Day every year. She wants me to show up with a girlfriend so she can stop asking me when I'm getting married, but she doesn't actually care who it is as long as they fit the image." Mia's expression softened, and she turned slightly toward him. "Sounds rough." Elliot shrugged, a little embarrassed at how much he had just let slip. "It's not that bad. I just don't want to get into it right now." "Well, don't worry, I'm the perfect distraction," she said, her voice light but with a hint of something more underneath it. "I'll be on my best behavior, I promise." They reached Elliot's apartment complex a few minutes later, and he couldn't help but feel a knot in his stomach tighten as they parked. This was it. He was about to introduce Mia to his parents, to pretend like they were a real couple. The thought made his palms a little clammy. He wasn't even sure what his parents would think of her, let alone how he'd keep up the act. "Ready?" Mia asked, her voice cutting through his thoughts. She was already halfway out of the car, a glint of confidence in her eyes. He forced a smile and nodded. "Yeah. Let's do this." The Hayes family home was, as always, decked out in festive decorations. The smell of turkey wafted out as they entered, and Elliot felt himself relax for the first time since he'd picked Mia up. His mom, Anna Hayes, was at the stove, humming cheerfully to a Christmas carol playing on the radio. His father, James Hayes, sat at the dining table, reading the newspaper. "Elliot." His mom's face lit up as she saw him walk in, followed by Mia. "And who's this? Your date, I presume?" Mia smiled warmly, extending a hand. "Hi, I'm Mia. It's lovely to meet you." "Oh my goodness, she's gorgeous," Anna exclaimed, putting down the spoon she was stirring with to grab Mia's hand. "You must be a good influence on my son if you can make him show up with a smile on his face for once." Elliot cringed inwardly but forced a grin. "Mom, this is Mia. Mia, this is my mom, Anna. And my dad." He gestured to the man at the table, who had barely looked up from his newspaper. "Dad, you remember Mia from the, charity event last month?" James Hayes finally lifted his eyes and gave a brief nod. "Mia. Right." Mia smiled, seemingly unfazed by his lack of enthusiasm. "Yes, I remember you. The event was fantastic." Elliot's mom didn't miss a beat, already steering Mia toward the kitchen. "Come on, darling, I'm sure you're starving. Come help me with the potatoes. I'm always behind on the prep, and Elliot never helps, of course." "Hey!" Elliot protested, but it was clear his mom was used to his half-hearted complaints. "Don't worry about it, I'll just hang out here with Dad," Mia said, winking at Elliot before following his mom into the kitchen. Elliot stood there for a moment, a little dazed by how naturally Mia had just slipped into the role. She was already laughing with his mom, who was enthusiastically telling her about her latest gardening endeavors. Elliot couldn't help but watch, a little taken aback by how easily Mia fit in. "You look surprised," James Hayes said suddenly, his voice gruff but warm. Elliot turned to face his father, who had folded his newspaper and was now looking directly at him. "What do you mean?" "Your mom's always had a way of making people feel welcome. But you look different, more relaxed. Is that because of her?" James asked, his tone almost casual. Elliot blinked. His father was never one to delve into personal matters, especially when it came to relationships. The sudden insight left him momentarily speechless. I don't know. It's just, I guess she's good at making an impression. But you know it's just temporary, right?" James raised an eyebrow, a small smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Sure. Just temporary." He leaned back in his chair, eyeing his son closely. "But I gotta say, you seem happier. I'm glad for you, kid." Before Elliot could respond, his mother reappeared, arms full of mashed potatoes and gravy. "Elliot, you'd better set the table before we get started," she called over her shoulder as she headed to the kitchen. Elliot shot his dad a quick look, but his father simply winked. "Go on. Looks like you might be getting the hang of this." As he moved to help with the table, Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Something small but significant. Mia, the woman he had hired to pretend to be his girlfriend, was beginning to feel like more than just a prop in his family's grand holiday drama. And the worst part? He was starting to like it. He was starting to like her. Dinner passed in a blur of laughter, food, and awkward but surprisingly pleasant conversation. His mother seemed completely enchanted by Mia, asking questions about everything from her childhood to her career aspirations. And Mia, to her credit, responded with a grace that seemed both natural and effortlessly charming. She was a perfect guest, so perfect, in fact, that Elliot almost forgot they were pretending. As dessert was being served, Elliot's mother leaned over the table with a mischievous gleam in her eye. "So, Mia," she began, "how serious are you and Elliot, I'm sure he's told you all about the family's Christmas traditions. Mia smiled, playing along. Oh, I've heard all about them. He mentioned something about a hideous sweater contest, though I'm not sure I'm ready for that kind of challenge. Elliot felt his face flush. Mom, seriously? I've told you 1,000,000 times, no one cares about the ugly sweaters anymore. But his mother was already grinning, clearly enjoying herself. Oh, I think Mia would look darling in one. Mia laughed, her eyes catching Elliot's. If it'll make everyone happy, I'll play along. But I have to warn you, I have some serious competition when it comes to fashion. Elliot shook his head, half in disbelief and half in amusement. I'm beginning to think you're too good at this. Mia leaned in, her voice lowering just a little. I told you, Elliot. I'm a professional. And for the first time that evening, Elliot found himself laughing for real, the tension of the last few hours easing as he realized just how much fun this ridiculous charade was actually turning out to be. But little did he know, as the night wore on, the line between acting and reality would blur even further, until neither of them knew where the performance ended and where their true feelings began. For now, though, Elliot could only wonder, was this just a game? Or was something much more complicated beginning to form between him and Mia? He couldn't say for sure, but one thing was certain. This Christmas was going to be unforgettable. Elliot woke up in his apartment, bathed in the soft glow of late morning light. Though it was nearly 10 o'clock, the stillness of the space gave it the feel of early dawn. The night before was a blur, a mixture of good wine, a carefully rehearsed act, and casual conversation. It all seemed too easy, too perfect. He could barely remember the details, but he remembered how he felt when Mia smiled at him, how they laughed over nothing, and how it almost didn't matter that they weren't actually a couple. For a brief moment, everything felt real. He stretched out of bed and walked over to the window, glancing out at the city below. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows on the floor. Elliot had always preferred the quiet of mornings like this, moments before the world outside started to rush again. He couldn't help but feel that the past few days had been a strange dance of pretending, and now, waking up to find Mia still in his apartment, lying on the couch, only made it harder to differentiate between what was real and what was a lie. Mia was still asleep, wrapped in a blanket, her hair scattered across the pillow like some untamed wildness. She looked peaceful, innocent, as though the playful actress he had hired was nowhere to be found. Instead, there was just this woman, someone he didn't know but felt strangely connected to, even though their relationship was entirely manufactured. Elliot stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her sleep. There was a part of him that wondered if she ever felt anything real in this game they were playing. The thought made him uneasy. It had been just a simple plan at first, a way to get through his family's relentless pressure about marriage. But now, with Mia lying there so casually, so naturally, it was as though the lines between fiction and reality were becoming dangerously blurred. He shook his head, pushing the thoughts aside. This was just a job for her, nothing more. They'd talked about it. Mia was just doing her part. She would leave once Christmas was over, and everything would go back to normal. But could it really go back to normal? Elliot walked into the kitchen and made himself a cup of coffee, trying to distract himself from the unsettling thoughts swirling in his mind. The warmth of the mug in his hands felt grounding, like a reminder that some things in life were still steady and unchanging. As he sipped, his phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Mia. Mia, good morning, Elliot. Thank you for a wonderful evening. Hope we can do it again sometime. The words hit him unexpectedly. He hadn't anticipated this kind of warmth from her, especially after everything had been so carefully orchestrated. A smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Was she just being polite, or was there something more to it? Could she be enjoying this charade as much as he was? Before he could dwell on it too much, the sound of movement from the living room caught his attention. Mia was awake. She appeared in the kitchen a moment later, her hair messy from sleep, eyes still half closed. She stretched with a yawn, her voice still thick with sleep. Coffee? She asked. Elliot nodded, gesturing toward the counter. Help yourself. She poured herself a cup and leaned against the kitchen counter, her eyes studying him in a way that made him feel uncomfortably exposed. He tried to shrug it off. It was just a cup of coffee between two people who were pretending to be something they weren't. Still, there was something about her presence that made him uneasy, like she could see right through the act he was putting on. After a few moments of silence, Mia finally spoke. "So, what do we do now? I mean, last night was great, but we can't just keep pretending forever, right?" The casualness of her words made him pause. She wasn't just talking about the evening or their little ruse. She was talking about their entire relationship, the whole setup. Elliot didn't know how to respond, so he opted for the usual defense mechanism, humor. "Right?" he said with a forced chuckle. "I guess I should get back to finding a real girlfriend now, huh?" Mia raised an eyebrow, clearly not amused. "You're not going to just forget about this, are you?" Elliot froze, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. Was she serious? Of course, he hadn't forgotten. How could he? But was she asking if he was ready to face the truth? The idea that the lines between their act and reality were starting to blur was unsettling. He wasn't prepared to confront those feelings. He had hired her for a reason, to avoid real emotions, to avoid connection. So why was he suddenly feeling like he was caught in the middle of something that could get out of hand? "I'm not forgetting," he said slowly, setting his cup down and turning to face her. "But I just don't know where this is going." "Neither do I," Mia said with a shrug. "But it's been fun, right?" Elliot opened his mouth to respond, but the words stuck in his throat. What could he say to that? It had been fun. In fact, the last few days had been more enjoyable than he'd expected. But it was only supposed to be temporary. It was never meant to be more than a simple solution to a family problem. Yet now, there was a part of him that didn't want to let go of what they had, whatever it was. Mia took a sip of her coffee, her gaze never leaving him. "Look, I don't want to make this complicated," she said, her voice suddenly more serious. "I know this is all just for show. But there's something between us, don't you think?" Elliot's heart skipped a beat. The words hit him harder than he expected. He could feel his pulse quicken as he met her gaze. For a moment, it felt as though everything, the fake dates, the rehearsed smiles, the made-up stories, had all led to this single moment. The walls he'd built around himself, the barriers he'd created to keep his emotions in check, were beginning to crumble. Could it really be possible that he had started to care about her, despite everything? "I don't know," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't think I would, but now, I'm not so sure." Mia's eyes softened, and for a split second she looked vulnerable. It was a side of her he hadn't seen before. It made him wonder if maybe, just maybe, she was feeling the same thing he was. But he couldn't be sure. She was an actress, after all. She knew how to play a part just as he did. "I guess we're in the same boat then," she said quietly, looking down at her coffee cup, trying to figure out what's real and what's not. There was a long silence between them, thick with unspoken words and uncertain feelings. Elliot could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Everything about their arrangement had been so clear-cut at first, just a fake relationship to please his family. But now, it felt like they were crossing a line, stepping into unknown territory. Finally, Elliot broke the silence. "So, what happens now?" Mia met his gaze, her expression thoughtful. "We keep pretending," she said, her voice firm yet tinged with a hint of sadness. "But maybe we start being honest with ourselves too." And in that moment, Elliot realized that nothing about this situation was simple. Not anymore. The lines between real and fake, between what they had and what they were supposed to have, were no longer so clear. And for the first time since this whole thing started, he wasn't sure if he was ready to face whatever came next. As they stood there, both uncertain but strangely connected, Elliot knew one thing for sure: this was no longer just about a family dinner. It was something deeper, something neither of them could control. And he wasn't sure whether that terrified him or excited him. The old wooden cabin stood just on the edge of the Massachusetts countryside, draped in soft snow and holiday cheer. A wreath hung on the front door, the lights twinkled in perfect synchronization, and the smell of cinnamon and pine lingered in the crisp air. It was exactly what you'd imagine a picturesque Christmas at home would look like. Elliot sat stiffly in the front seat of his car, staring at the cabin through the windshield. Beside him, Mia adjusted her scarf in the rearview mirror and practiced her brightest, most charming smile. "Okay," she said, glancing at him. "On a scale from 1 to disaster, how nervous are you?" He exhaled heavily. "Somewhere between awkward family dinner and World War III. Mia laughed, and the sound cut through the tension like a warm knife through butter. "Perfect. That's my specialty." "You're sure about this?" he asked, turning to face her. "You don't have to go in there and face a whole army of neurotic, judgmental relatives." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh, come on. You're not getting cold feet now, are you? I practiced all your cousin names, your dad's terrible jokes, and that weird family tradition involving the gingerbread man contest. I'm in too deep." Elliot couldn't help but smile. She was confident, unbothered, and somehow made everything feel less terrifying. "You're better at this than I am." "I am an actress, Elliot," she said, flicking an imaginary speck off her coat. "This is what I do. Fake it until it gets real, or weird. Or both." With that, she opened the car door and stepped into the snow, the soft crunch beneath her boots echoing in the stillness of the winter air. Elliot followed her, reluctantly. The porch creaked under their weight as they approached the door. Before they could even knock, the door flung open. "Merry Christmas," a woman shrieked, arms wide open. Elliot's younger sister, Claire, was a tornado of excitement wrapped in plaid and red lipstick. "You made it." Claire's eyes immediately landed on Mia. "And you must be Mia." She swept forward and hugged her before Mia could react. "Oh my God," Claire whispered into Mia's ear. "You're way prettier than his last girlfriend." Mia blinked. Thank you." Claire pulled back. Come in. Mom's already spiked the eggnog and Dad's pretending to be sober. It's not Christmas without emotional turbulence." Elliot groaned. The moment they stepped inside, it was a tidal wave of holiday chaos. Lights, decorations, pets, children, the smell of turkey in the oven, and family members everywhere. "Elliot," his mother cried from across the room, her arms waving. "My baby boy is home." And within moments, he was swept into a hug, followed by more hugs, awkward cheek kisses, and questions. 100 variations of, "Who's this lovely young woman? Are you two serious? Will there be a wedding next Christmas?" Mia, to her credit, handled it all with remarkable grace. She smiled at the right moments, laughed politely at jokes, and even helped Elliot's grandmother down the steps like she was born into the family. At one point, as they settled down near the fireplace with steaming mugs of cider, Elliot found himself watching her more than listening to the conversation. She was sitting beside his niece, helping her glue tiny buttons onto a gingerbread man. Her laughter was light, unforced. She fit in too well. "Careful, Elliot," his older brother muttered beside him. "You keep looking at her like that, people are gonna think it's real." Elliot turned to glare at him. "It is real," he whispered back. His brother grinned. "Right. Totally. Just a coincidence she looks like a Hallmark movie lead and knows how to handle Grandma's endless stories." The rest of the day passed in a warm, noisy blur. Games were played, food was devoured, gifts were exchanged, and memories were made. And through it all, Mia never broke character once. If anything, she became the life of the party. After dinner, while the kids fell asleep on couches and the adults relaxed around the fire, Mia pulled Elliot aside and led him onto the porch. The night was quiet. Snow had begun to fall again, soft flakes dancing through the dark sky. "That," she said, looking up, "was the most intense fake family gathering I've ever survived." "You did great," Elliot replied, leaning against the porch railing. "Your cousin tried to set me up with his friend from law school," she added, mock-offended. "What? Who?" She laughed. "Relax. I told him I was taken by a slightly neurotic, emotionally constipated lawyer with commitment issues." Elliot groaned. "Thanks. That's flattering." Mia smiled, then looked at him, her eyes softening. "But seriously, today was kind of nice." He nodded. It was. They stood in silence for a moment, the cold air brushing against them. The sound of laughter drifted from inside, mixed with the crackling of the fireplace. Then Mia said quietly, "Your mom hugged me like she meant it. She probably did, Elliot said. She's a hugger. No, I mean like I belonged. Like I wasn't just some outsider. Even though this isn't real, they made me feel like I was part of something. Elliot looked at her. Maybe it doesn't have to be fake forever. She blinked. Are you serious? He shrugged. I don't know. I've spent the last few years running from this. From connection. From feelings. But you? Being here with you, it's different. Mia looked away, her breath visible in the cold air. You can't say things like that, Elliot. Not when this started as a gig. I know, he said. But what if it's more now? She turned to face him. Do you want it to be? He hesitated. I think I do. The porch light flickered slightly, the snow falling gently around them. For a moment, the whole world went still. Then Mia smiled and took a step closer. Then let's keep pretending a little longer, she whispered, until we don't have to anymore. And as she leaned in and kissed him softly, gently, with none of the performative flair of their previous rehearsals, Elliot realized that somewhere along the way, their story had changed. This wasn't just a family affair anymore. This was the beginning of something real. The sun rose slowly over the snow-covered hills of Massachusetts, casting a pale golden hue across the frosted landscape. Inside the cabin, everything was still. Warmth radiated from the smoldering fireplace, and the faint smell of cinnamon rolls baking in the kitchen crept into the air like a gentle promise. Mia awoke with a soft yawn, blinking away the dreams of the night before. She was on the guest room's bed, wrapped in a thick comforter, a stocking cap someone had thoughtfully placed near the pillow, and her phone buzzing softly on the nightstand. She sat up slowly, brushing hair from her eyes and glancing at the time. 7:03 a.m. The entire house was quiet, the kind of calm only found in the early hours after a big family holiday. She smiled faintly, remembering last night, the way Elliot had looked at her, the kiss they shared, the cold air around them that somehow felt warm when he held her close. It hadn't been part of the plan. None of it was. But it felt real. Too real. As she padded down the hallway, following the scent of coffee, she heard soft humming from the kitchen. Elliot's mother was already at the stove, in her festive robe, flipping pancakes with surprising agility for someone her age. Mia. Good morning, sweetheart. The older woman's face lit up as she saw her. You sleep okay? I did, Mia replied, tying her hair into a messy bun. Better than I expected, honestly. Elliot's mom handed her a cup of steaming coffee, already made just the way she liked it, black, with a single sugar cube. You were a big hit yesterday. I think my sister whispered 3 times that she hopes Elliot doesn't mess this one up. Mia chuckled. I hope so too. Before she could say more, Elliot appeared in the doorway, hair tousled and wearing a sweater that might have belonged to his dad. He looked at Mia like he hadn't stopped thinking about her since last night. She noticed. Morning, he said softly, his voice a little rough from sleep. Morning, she replied, suddenly unsure whether she should say more in front of his mother. Thankfully, the woman smiled knowingly and waved a hand. All right, lovebirds. I'll leave you two to flirt while I pretend not to notice. I'm going to make sure your niece hasn't eaten glitter again. When she was gone, Elliot walked over and took the seat beside Mia, sipping from the mug his mom had prepared for him. There was a comfortable silence between them, a silence that didn't demand to be filled. So, Elliot began, about last night. Mia raised an eyebrow. Yeah, I meant what I said. I know this started as an act, but... He hesitated, swirling his coffee. I've never brought anyone home for Christmas. Ever. I thought I'd hate this whole thing. But with you, it didn't feel like pretending. Mia bit her lip. It didn't feel that way for me either. He looked at her. Then maybe we don't have to keep pretending. Are you asking me to keep doing this, but for real? I guess I am. Mia leaned back, sipping her coffee. You realize I still have to go back to LA when the holidays are over, right? I've got auditions, a manager who thinks I'm dating a producer, and a shared apartment with a roommate who steals my almond milk. I'm aware, he said, but I'm also aware that I've been a complete idiot about love most of my life. And this, whatever this is, it's the most natural thing I've felt in years. She tilted her head, studying him. You always talk like a closing argument. Elliot smiled. Old habits die hard. Mia sighed playfully. Well, counselor, I'll consider your offer. I just need to see your resume, list of emotional references, and whether or not you snore. I don't snore, he said, a little too quickly. Aha. Just then, the living room erupted into chaos as the younger cousins came storming downstairs in their pajamas, chasing each other with marshmallow shooters. Elliot groaned as a soft one hit him square in the cheek. Christmas round 2, he muttered. Mia laughed and stood, tossing her hair over her shoulder. Come on, hero. Time to save your family from sugary destruction. The rest of the day unfolded with heartwarming chaos, board games, snowball fights, Mia being roped into helping with the gingerbread house rebuild after Elliot's cousin accidentally sat on the old one, and an impromptu talent show where Mia, reluctantly, sang a jazzed-up version of Jingle Bell Rock, with a kazoo accompaniment from Elliot's uncle. Later in the afternoon, Elliot found himself in the garage with his dad, helping him carry up an old box of decorations they hadn't used in years. She's a good one, your Mia, his father said, not looking directly at him. She's not really my Mia. Not officially. Then maybe you should change that. Before someone else does. Elliot nodded slowly, the thought lodging itself deep into his chest. That evening, as the sky turned lavender and the Christmas lights blinked in the windows, Elliot and Mia sat bundled together on the back porch. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her without a word. You know, she said softly, this could be a really good movie. Elliot chuckled. Let me guess. Big city lawyer falls for quirky actress he hires to fake date him for the holidays. Exactly, she said, smiling. Except maybe with a dog and a snowstorm in the third act. Too cliché. But cliché can be nice sometimes, she replied. Clichés are just truths we see coming. He turned his head slightly to look at her. You're kind of poetic for someone who once played a zombie cheerleader. Hey, that was a critically underappreciated role. They both laughed. As the stars began to twinkle above them, Elliot took her hand gently in his. Whatever this is, I don't want it to end with the holidays. Mia squeezed his hand. Then let's see where the story goes next. And beneath the soft snowflakes and warm porch light, they sat together, not lawyer and actress, not fake couple and client, but simply Elliot and Mia. Two people who stepped into a lie and found something real. The first day of the new year arrived, wrapped in quiet stillness. Snowflakes danced gently in the air like whispered promises, coating the world in silver. The little town seemed frozen in a beautiful pause, between the end of something and the beginning of something else. Mia stood outside Elliot's childhood home, her suitcase beside her, her breath visible in the crisp morning air. She was dressed for travel, coat, boots, and that same knit hat Elliot's mom had given her on Christmas morning. Her flight back to Los Angeles was in a few hours. Her phone buzzed silently in her pocket with reminders, auditions, meetings, her agent's texts. The real world was calling her back. Elliot stepped out onto the porch, holding 2 mugs of hot cocoa. I figured you'd want one last taste of home before going back to Kiss, he said, offering her the cup. She smiled, accepting it. I'm going to miss your mom's cinnamon pancakes. And I'll miss pretending I don't burn toast. They both laughed, but the sound was soft, a little too gentle, like neither wanted to admit the moment was slipping away. There was a silence then, not uncomfortable but loaded. Like everything they didn't say was suspended in the air between them. I meant everything I said. Elliot finally broke it, his voice quieter than usual. Back at the cabin during the kiss, all of it. I know, Mia whispered. I did too. Then stay, he said, his eyes searching hers. We can figure it out. You don't have to leave today. Mia looked down at the mug in her hands, the steam curling up like ghosts of doubt. Elliot, you have your life here. You're from your family. I have my... I can't just drop everything for a maybe. But what if it's not a maybe? He stepped closer. What if it's a beginning? Her eyes shimmered, not from the cold, but from something deeper. I want it to be. More than anything. But I need to go back. Not forever, just to close some chapters. Elliot nodded slowly. He didn't try to stop her. That wasn't love, it wasn't control. It was understanding. And it was rare. "I'll be here," he said. "Whenever you're ready." "I know," she smiled through the sting in her chest. "Maybe I'll be back sooner than you think." 3 months later, the streets of Boston bloomed with early spring, buds peeking from bare trees, sidewalks drying from months of frost. Elliot was in his office, finishing up a case review, when his assistant poked her head in. "There's someone here to see you." He didn't look up. "Tell them I'm booked till 3. She said you'd want to make an exception." Elliot raised an eyebrow and finally glanced up. Mia stood in the doorway, wearing a trench coat, a grin, and carrying a small duffel bag. "Hope you're not billing anyone by the minute." His heart stopped, then raced, then melted. "You're back," he breathed, standing. "I wrapped the indie film. My agent's furious." "I don't care." She stepped in, nervous and glowing. "I realized I could chase dreams forever and still miss the one thing that felt real." He walked over, slowly, as if afraid she might vanish. "Are you staying?" "That depends," she said, reaching into her bag and pulling out a snow globe, the one from his fireplace mantel back home. Inside, it showed a little cabin surrounded by falling snow. "I thought maybe we could find a place like this. Not just for Christmas. For always." Elliot took the snow globe, then her hand. "Deal. But only if we put up terrible Christmas lights every year and you promise to sing kazoo carols again." Mia laughed. "I'll even throw in zombie cheerleader impressions." They kissed, this time not for show, not for pretending. It was slow, certain, and full of the kind of magic that only comes when you've found someone who sees all of you, even the parts you didn't know needed to be seen. Outside the office window, it began to snow. Just lightly. Just enough. As if the world itself was giving them one last quiet blessing.